Good morning, friends. Hold on. Hold it. Hold it. Which one is this now? There we go. Let's see if I'm going to connect here. Nope. Immediately, so apparently my iPods will connect to my phone. Hello, Tina, how are you? And not my iPad right now. And so, nope, we cannot connect. Okay, sorry about that. So we have I've got a toddler who is sick. I have a toddler who is convinced she's sick. She's not. Little Precious, who has disappeared to play on the computer and stay out of everyone's way. And so, forgive the casual look this morning, but it has been a long night, and we're going to stay in today and try and keep everyone around us healthy and safe. I'm going to drink a lot of Liquid IV and do things that hopefully will boost my immune system because I got a big week. Hopefully keep everybody healthy, get the sick one back to feeling good because she is just not herself when she feels badly. Hello, Janice. How are you, friend? Good morning, Brian. How are you? So, today, listen to this scandal. I have the unique, hello, Pam. How are you, friend? I have the unique gift, and I do mean gift, of being on the front row for so many incredible things. So when I was a kid, my dad worked for BASF. They don't make a lot of the products you buy. They make a lot of the products you buy better. And he sold chemicals to farmers to help make their crops more productive. And so Dad would go to all these sales meetings, and Dad would go to these business meetings and these corporate meetings where they would talk about things, like as with all companies, there was always some shtick to try to help you be more productive, and words like synergy got used. And so one of the things that Dad had brought home from one of those conferences was a washer on the end of a string, and he handed it to me, and I was probably 7th, 8th grade-ish, maybe. He handed me the string, and he said, close your eyes. And he said, make the string move, hold your hand very still, and make the string go to the right. And so I was like, oh, I'm not doing it. And he said, open your eyes. And sure enough, the string was going to the right. He's like, okay, close your eyes again, and make the string still. And so the string got still, and he said, all right, now make it spin in a circle. I'm like, there's no way. And then I opened my eyes, and sure enough, the string was spinning in a circle. And the point of that exercise was to say, you can do anything you put your mind to. The power of the mind is incredible. And so just think a little bit with me when I was thinking about that, because the verse of the day this weekend, I don't remember if it was yesterday's or today's, comes from Romans 12. And we were going to circle back around into the parables of Jesus, but this verse and this week really coincided as I was talking to a 14-year-old trying to convince me while she was laughing and being giddy and definitely in no way, shape, or form feeling badly that she too had a fever. Because the mind is a powerful thing, an incredibly powerful thing. So, hello, Tiny Jones. How are you, friend? So, Friday I had 3 cases in Columbia. 2 of them were termination proceedings that were very straightforward. None of the parties showed up. Those parents, and I use that word very loosely, are not invested in any sort of parental role. They're interested in owning their children, possession of their children, control of their children. Hello, Walter. How are you, friend? They're very much, this is my property, and you're not going to take it from me. You're not going to tell me what to do, despite the fact I've done these things to cause risks to this child, despite the fact I haven't shown up, and I haven't visited, and I haven't supported, and I haven't gone and gotten myself in order to be in a safe place to parent these children. You're not going to take my stuff. And so those trials went very quickly and easily, as they should, because in Tennessee you're allowed to parent your child any way you want to as long as minimum standards are met. Hello, friend. How are you? And so in this situation, those were trials. I put on proof. There were other attorneys involved. The judge made a ruling at the end of my proof, just like you see on TV. The third is the same lawsuit, a very similar lawsuit that I filed on behalf of these foster parents who had these children for a long time against 2 parents who initially saw their children as property. I think this is mine. I think you're not going to take this from me. I think that this is terrible. I think that you're prosecuting me. I think you're attacking me. I think this is unfair. I think this is wrong, and I'm going to fight it. Just like anybody who is being defensive would. But at some point, this dad, and I use that term very specifically, this dad's thinking changed. This dad said, I don't want my children to grow up in this instability. I don't want my children to be removed from the stability that they found in this home. I want to be able to be my best version of myself and still be there for my children. So we didn't do like an official contract, but there's a relationship between these adoptive parents and that biological parent. And so the agreement that they have now is that as long as it's safe and appropriate, these children already know who you are and need to continue all the positive relationships they can get. As long as it's positive and supportive and it doesn't cause additional trauma by you leaving or disappearing or whatever, then absolutely we need these children to be in the best supported place they can be. And that man decided, with the support of his family and the support of his faith, to agree that those children get to stay in their stability. His thinking went from, I'm being attacked, this is against me, I hate everybody, this is unfair, you're taking my stuff, to, I have an opportunity to be a part of something magical, but I've got to change my way of thinking. And he did. I live in a house with a person whose mind is absolutely in control of everything she does, and sometimes she has no control over her mind. So when things don't work out the way that she thinks they should work out, she goes into, hello Christy, how are you, friend? She goes into a nuclear meltdown. She had to come home from school on Friday because things didn't go the way she thought it should. And she just couldn't ever, I was in court, so we weren't able to have the mom get control of this. You got to get your head out of chaos mode here. You got to control your mind. You got to control your mind. And we weren't able to do that until she got home. And so we had that conversation in a very Stacy way, and she wrote down a list of rules on here's what I'm looking for and here's what I'm going to do when these things come up again. And so she has a plan. And so she's going to do something this week. And I was like, what happens if that doesn't go the way you think it's going to go? How are you going to handle it? Because I'm real nervous about that. And she said, I have a plan now. I have a plan so that I know how to keep my mind in check. Well, then sis gets sick, and it has taken me all night, and I'm not sure it's been successful yet, to convince her that she doesn't have a fever, she's not coughing, she's not lethargic, she's not sad, she's not sore, she doesn't have chills, she's fine. And yet her mind still has convinced her, because she started thinking that way, that she's sick. And so I have a stupid, fantastic front row seat to see just how powerful our mind is. The things we let sit in our mind, the things we tell ourselves. Hello, Andy. How are you, friend? The things that we do, the things we assume, the things that we put into our mind. In fact, I'm writing a book about it. I got a book series for kids about a unicorn named Pippi and a grumpy black cat named Felix. And they started out talking about adoption, and then they went to divorce, and then they talked, the third book is about, it's not in any order, it's just, this is the order I wrote them in. The third book's about foster care and how we deal with that, even though, how as a kid, how do I love people that I'm supposed to love while keeping myself safe from their bad choices? And then the fourth book came from my experience with my oldest this past Friday. We all get a backyard. And if you're not careful, if those of you who are raised in the South, like I was, in fact, my daddy's farm is a prime example. If you're not careful to keep your space clean, your backyard clean, folks will just drive by and dump stuff. And y'all know that. You got beer cans in your yard, or they'll bring a mattress and dump it out in your back 40, or here's a dead deer carcass we would have put on our land so the vultures wouldn't get our calves. And so if you don't keep tending your space and put those fences up well, then anybody that comes along, you included, will just start dumping stuff in there. And the more you dump stuff in there, the more you get rats and vultures and flies and maggots and all the things that are necessary to clean up trash, that live off trash. Those things that really enjoy trash will come to your space. But if you do the intentional work of removing that garbage that attracts garbage and attracts other things we don't like, and do the hard work of tending to our garden, it comes into a beautiful space where there's butterflies and hummingbirds and little baby deer and rabbits and songbirds and peace and good smells. And so the book is about how do we control our mind, our backyard, for children's purposes, but how do we do that? Romans 12:12 talks directly to that point. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And it's how it's our obligation as people who are looking for God, as people who want to be in relationship with God, as people who are trying to figure out who we are in God, to do the hard work of tending to our gardens. And so we're going to talk about that today. Lori says, mental health is health for sure. I walk my street with a trash bag to clean my street, all while talking to God. Prayer with purpose. Indeed. And speaking of prayer with purpose, any prayer requests or praises this morning, obviously keep my family in mind. Keep the families of those that I work with in mind. There's a lot of hard things coming up. There's a lot of hard. I don't know that I've ever been here and been like, you know what, this is a really easy peasy week. There's absolutely no problems at all whatsoever. The whole world is great. Thank you. So, obviously it's really difficult for me to say, put this on the prayer list, first of all, because I don't really think about, I have a hard time asking for help. Let me be honest. I have a difficult time saying, oh, here's something weighing heavy on my mind. Can you please join me? Stink at it, need to get better at it. That connection and spirit is something that I need to work on in my own journey. But certainly there's just a lot to pray for. And so how do you pick who needs praying for and who doesn't? Because they always need praying all the time. But certainly if we can remember those that are traveling for safety and accomplishment in those travels, hello Susan, how are you? I'll be traveling next week to visit a kiddo of mine. Speaking of controlling her mind, she's in we have a saying, my dad came up with this saying, which was really creepy. I'm not a person that gets offended, you can call me whatever. In fact, I haven't been called whatever, and if there's a name I have not been called yet in my journey as a child welfare lawyer, then I would love to hear it, because I don't think it exists. And so I just like to put that on the list. But this kid, my dad says things like honey, and he's a 70-year-old man, and it just feels a little bit odd when he's talking to, especially my child. He's like, well, how's Maddie was having to come apart, and she's over there talking about why everything is wrong and this isn't going to work and blah, blah, blah. And he looks at her and says, well, how's that working for you, honey? And I was just like, okay. Yeah, I kind of like it. It's jarring enough to make you think, how is this working how are these things working for me? So this kid called me last week, and she was in the same boat where she had gotten into a spiral about how things are terrible and never going to be any better and nobody's ever going to love her and blah, blah, blah. And so that's up to you. And she had made some choices that really pushed people away, and she felt like I was harping on those. I'm like, I'm not trying to remind you of these things that you did that were wrong to tell you, you were wrong or be mean. I'm trying to show you that if you made the choices to get into the hole, you get to make the choices to get out of the hole. So how's that working for you, honey? And so certainly I'm going to remember her in prayer. I'm going to see her in St. George, Utah at the end of the week. And then we'll be back. I'll be back in town on Sunday, but I'm not sure if there's any flight delay. I don't know that I will be back in time for Sunday school, but we'll see how that goes next week, okay? I want to continue to remember Dr. Benefield and his wife. I think he's in a place where his mind is playing tricks on him as well. So I want to continue to remember him, and prayers for strength and courage to renew his mind. And I have not been through what he's been through. I've been through things that I would judge are far less intrusive. I think there's no toaster for who wins the worst trauma. Please stop comparing your trauma to everyone else's trauma. It's not a thing. There's not a gold medal for crap falling into our lives. If it's your crap, that's good enough for you to recognize without any sort of I should handle this better because Betty down the street handles her crap better. Crap is crap is crap. And so if it's in your life and it's causing you to be disrupted from a safe, stable life meeting your needs, then it is enough to be acknowledged. Okay, so there's this thing. So I have had some things that disrupted my strategy and success, and it's okay. That is enough for me to acknowledge. I have not been through the same stuff that Dr. Benefield and his family's gone through. I would imagine that if I had been going through anything for as long as they've been going through this, I would also find it hard to stay in the mentally healthy space. Hey, Lauren. I would like I'm not a patient person, so if I didn't get this fixed immediately, then okay, I guess that's the end of the world. So certainly want to remember that struggle of just being persistent and resilient day after day after day, and I can only imagine how exhausting and frustrating it is. And I am so grateful that this family continues to do the hard work to stay in the race, because I would imagine it would be really easy to feel like you could give up. Want to continue to pray for Terry, Lynn, Kay, and parents from my dad's Sunday school class, Jason, Randy, Jerry, Carrie, Gracie, Alicia's dad, Joanne. Miss Elvie is doing better. Rhonda gave us an update yesterday. She is doing very well, all things considered, and was grateful for the love and support that you guys have shown her during her recovery from her motorcycle accident. Want to continue to remember Jeff, Rachel, Chloe, Larry on here, Larry, Tristan, Dakota, Dion, Kim, Joyce Weigert. What's going on with Miss Joyce? Wanda, Kim's mom, Betsy, and the other Betsy, Kursden, Kevin, Drew, Lily, who is doing a kabillion times better, and looked so gorgeous at her dance the other night. But also her mom, Bridget, who is now home from the hospital, but is still waiting on a kidney. So we want to remember Bridget's journey to find that kidney that gives her the new energy that she needs to be successful in her continued walk with the Lord. Selby and her family, Christy, Devine, Amanda, Jamie, Caden, and Allie, who have had some answered prayers in their walk. So grateful for that. I want to continue to remember those affected by tragedy, including the fires in California, and Tina's mom. Oh no, Miss Joyce has been struggling for a while, and Miss Joyce is one of my favorite human beings. Just have loved her since she has always been nothing but absolutely brilliant to me, and I just adore her. So we certainly want to remember her for her peace and comfort and healing. Any other prayer requests or praises before we commence to talking about controlling our minds, renewing our minds? And I mean, isn't that the point? Sometimes when I'm like, oh, I got to control myself, it is exhausting. And fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I love that. And I love that how the Bible puts that is that it is just a natural byproduct of our walk with the Lord. And I'm a little bit annoyed that that's how it's put, because I think we do the best we can. We'll add Lori there. I think we do the best we can walking with God, and we have varying degrees of success throughout the day, not just like throughout chapters of our life, but throughout the day. We have moments where we feel really close and where it's very easy to be loving and kind and gentle and faithful and control ourselves. And then there are times, I'm not even saying that it's not the McDonald's parking lot when you do that merch thing, where it's very difficult to just feel that gift. And so sometimes it feels like a hard job to do to have those things. What I love about this scripture we're going to talk about today is that, yeah, we've got to show up for it. We absolutely have to show up for it. But the benefit is not that we're marking some box off. We have accomplished some task. when we control our mind, when we exercise self-control, when we demonstrate these things, it's not like, well, box checked, good for us. We are renewed. We get new energy. We get a new perspective. Life changes once we shift our perspective. And so I can't wait to talk about that. But anybody else before we go to the Lord? Ugh. Again, Scripture's heavy this morning before we go to the Lord in prayer. All right, will you join me, please? God, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this opportunity to choose you, to wake up amidst all of the things that weigh heavy on our mind and to say, nope, I'm sitting with God today. Thank you for these folks who are full of love and kindness and joy and faith, who seek you, God, who sit with me seeking you, who share my walk and my journey in such a comforting and healing way, God, to know that there are 2 or 3 or more gathered in your name, and you are present in our midst. God, thank you for reminding us that you are present and that our connection with each other heals and helps our connection with you. God, in that connection, we come to you boldly with confidence before your throne to ask for healing for those names we've mentioned here today. We ask for healing for those names that weigh heavy on our hearts, that we can't mention, that we don't have the words to share, that we yearn to see healed and whole. God, for those who are undergoing temporary challenges, God, for those who are struggling to see the end of theirs, God, for those who are waiting in moments of transition, for those who are eagerly awaiting a next chapter and hoping for the patience to sit, God, please hold those hearts in your righteous right hand, in your protective love. God, thank you for your reassurance that you are steadfast and faithful. God, give us peace and comfort. Give peace and comfort to those who hurt. God, give us the strength and the courage, and those we love, the strength and the courage to renew our minds in you. God, speak to us through your word today. Amen. Hello, Plumbing River. How are you? Let's see what this says. Family of Clyde Richter. He passed and was the oldest church member at Iron City First Baptist. He has attended there his entire life. So we want to remember the family of Clyde Richter. We absolutely have him down. Any other prayer requests or praises? I just got a message. Let me see if there is. Okay. So, who is God? 1 John 4:16.5 says, God is love, and those that live in love live in God, and God lives in them. I was born a Baptist. My mom was pregnant with me when she accepted Christ. She raised her hand to accept Christ when she was 12 at a vacation Bible school held at her family church, our family church, where we all, even as a child, I went every time I was with Nana and Papa. So, it was a really strong, closely knit family of faith. And when the other kids started raising their hand, Mother did too. And she assumed, she believed that she had checked the box, right? Sure, I'll take that warranty. Check. Don't want to burn in hell. Let me check that box. Perfect. And then as she grew, and she was still very close with her family. Obviously, like my mom really didn't strike out on her own until she and Dad moved across the United States they went from Tennessee to South Carolina, all the way to Idaho Falls, Idaho, where I was born. And so there was she didn't have the same support system that she had in Middle Tennessee. And so, when we're shoved out on a limb by ourselves a little bit, it's easier for us to see how far we are from that which we know and feel comfortable with. And so once she was able to kind of get away from the status quo and everybody's reassurances and the support of that, she was able to get right with God. It was her and God. When it's just us and God, we are often given the opportunity to see God and to choose God in a different way. So she accepted, she started her journey, her spiritual journey, acknowledging that there was something bigger than her and she wanted to be a part of that, forsaking her own individual. And I think forsake is a good word for right there. I think we have to let go and turn our back to the lie that we are alone and that we are, it's us versus the world. And in order for us to choose God. Now, if that's that's the road you want to walk, man. It ain't mine to tell you what to do. I'm not here to tell you how to journey your journey. I'm not here to tell you how to get into heaven. It is not my heaven. It's not mine to tell you how to get into it. It is not mine to tell you what God says to you or anything else. It is mine to tell you that this is how my mom started her journey. And so I was raised in a family of faith where she turned her back on the idea that it was just her versus the world and connected with something bigger than her. And I was raised, my dad accepted that journey when he was 12, because it's just my dad is just, that's how my dad is. And so I started my own journey at a very young age, but I grew up in that culture. We went to church all the time. Dad was on the deacons, Sunday school director, mom taught Sunday school. We were at all the potlucks. We picked up trash in the parking lot. So I was raised in a way where those things were very normal. And so it wasn't until I got to be into adulthood when I really had to step out on the limb and figure out what's the deal with me and God. What do I believe about God? Do I believe some of the stuff that was told to me or that I believed I heard, whether I heard that or not? Or do I believe, a lot of the rules that I followed and a lot of my faith was based on rules other people told me to follow. That if you do this, that, or the other, then you will be pleasing to God. And if you don't, the opposite logic of that is, if you don't do this, that, or the other, then you're going to be displeasing to God. That God is not going to be happy with you. And that all of these things happen when God isn't happy with you. And I never really did figure out in all of those years of Vacation Bible School and mission trips and preaching and all the things, who God was. I knew what I had to do to get into God's place, but I didn't really ever hear anybody tell me what God looked like. What does God feel like? How does God act? Until I really focused on this verse, 1 John 4:16 and a half. God is love. And that's a whole sentence. There's nothing else. There's no caveat to that. There's no condition that God is love if this, that, or the other happens. If you do this, Stacy, then God is love. If you don't do that, God is not love. That's not anywhere in here. That is nowhere in here. That is nowhere in this big old book. Now, there's some folks in here, some regular old run-of-the-mill human beings that wrote some stuff down, and I believe it's inspired, and I believe the Lord works in mysterious ways. But I do not believe it is God's truth all the time. Not that it's not that person's truth given to them by God, but God is love. Period. End of story. Those that live in love live in God, and God lives in him. When I began to shift my way of thinking, my mind, from assuming that I am in charge of who God is. That if I act right, and I do all the things, and we use all those buzzwords, salvation, repentance, sin, hellfire, damnation, turn, repent, and there are people who need to hear that, and good for them, love it, listen to it. But when in my journey, which is mine, and I get to take it, and nobody gets to tell me either, that when I realize God is love, and that God is God, period, end of story, and I can choose my proximity, my closeness to God, and when I live in love, I live in God, and God lives in me. So those moments when I was frustrated, or scared, or afraid, or anxious, or sad, and not to say, like, this is just in my walk with God. Those moments when I began to be fearful that I wasn't good enough, or that God couldn't love me, or that God wasn't hearing me, or that my prayers weren't going past the ceiling, when I got to those places before this kind of insight, my expectation was, I'm not doing enough. Am I tithing enough? Am I praying enough? Am I doing enough volunteer work? Am I attending enough sermons? Am I singing enough hymns? Am I listening to enough of gospel music? Am I doing enough to earn God's favor? According to 1 John chapter 4:16 and a half, I can't earn God's favor because God is favor. I can get closer to favor, or I can step away from favor, but I can't change God. God is not waiting on Stacy to decide how important, big, right, loving, kind God is, which is good news for all of us. Let me be very clear. So when I figured out that God is love, and that when I'm looking for God, I have to stop living in fear. Because that's in the next, over here in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. Whoops, no, didn't go far enough. it says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. We love because God first loved us. So when I'm in a place where I feel far away from God, my thinking has changed from, what am I doing wrong, and how can I make God love me more, to, what am I afraid of? Ooh, and it's been a game changer, a really hard, stressful, emotional roller coaster of a game changer. When I feel far away from God, the question is not, how much repenting do I need to do? How much sinning have I done? How much of those things? I mean, and they're all tied in there. Don't feel like you can just put them in the trash. But the question should first be, what am I afraid of? If I don't feel like I'm close to God, hello, Janice, how are you, friend? What am I afraid of? Am I afraid that God doesn't exist? Am I afraid that I won't exist without this anger or resentment building? I have had something of a unique divorce in my life. I get along very well with my first husband. There's only been one husband, yes, before you asked. Only the one, maybe 1,700 more. I've decided I'm either never going to get married again, or I'm going to get married 247 times. I mean, why not? Life's short. It would have been really easy for both of us to get bogged down in anger and resentment. And it would have been very easy for both of us to refuse to get along, to co-parent well, to just act with civility towards each other, to act with kindness towards each other, until we got all that hammered out, until they admit they were wrong, until they did this, till and he could have said just the same about me. I'm not going to speak to you until you acknowledge this, or you ask my forgiveness, or you beg for my forgiveness here, there, or the other. Johnny Depp said, hate is an expensive emotion. And Johnny Depp is right. And so when we choose to lay down all of the things that are keeping us in fear, instead of living in love and living in God, then it's hard for us to get there. And we've all been there. I mean, this is not a judgment statement. But how's that working for you, honey? We'll go back and change the title of this Sunday school class to How's That Working For You, Honey? Because that's the transformation. That's the is what I'm doing, and it's only mine. It's me telling my child, it's just you. Like, you got to figure out what you're willing to do and how far you're willing to go to be happy and to walk with God and to feel whole. And faith is hard. Faith is super hard. Because you have to, it's hope in things you can't see. Which everything, hello Lacey, how are you, friend? Which everything in our culture tells us is wrong. It's a lie. It's a bad gamble. It's a risk. Don't do it. What if you fail? What if you fall on your face? Okay. Transforming of our mind says, what if I do? So what if I do? What happens then? What if I stop living in fear and I stop living in fear and start living in love? What does that look like? How does that work for me, honey? All right. What is love? According to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4, love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious, boastful, arrogant, or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. When we turn our back on fear and we turn our face towards love, and we choose to live in love, and to eat one cell, our entire bodies, it doesn't matter. There's going to be some resistance because fear is a powerful emotion. It's a lie, but it's a powerful emotion. And so when we turn our steps toward love, like, here's what happens. We believe all things, bear all things, hope all things, endure all things. So, by its very definition, it's going to come with those challenges. However, if we hang in there in the next verse right here, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 8, love never ends. So even though it feels like those challenges are coming, and they are, when we hope all things and endure all things and bear all things, believe all things, we move forward through the challenge, the resistance, the obstacles, the failure, the pain. When we let go of the fear, we've got no choice but to live in perfect love, which is patience and kindness and not envious, boastful, arrogant, or rude, and not insisting on its own way. So, is it hard? Absolutely. Will we get to the middle of it and think, oh crap, this was a terrible idea? Probably, if we have any sense about us. But it's the choice. It's the choice. And here's what these choices do for us. Romans 12. And y'all know, Romans was written by Paul. I think Paul's kind of an arrogant bag of fun. And I don't really care for a lot of his writing, just because I don't like his attitude. It's exhausting to hear someone. This is coming from someone who puts herself on Facebook every Sunday. So I get the irony. However, I guess Paul and I have that in common. And oftentimes the things that annoy us most are the things that we have about ourselves. So maybe there's a lot I need to dig into that. However, we're not doing it today. We've got sick kids and transforming of our minds to do. So here we are in Romans chapter 12. New life in Christ. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. So, here, Paul's saying, hey, everybody, by God's mercy, not because of God's rules, not because of God's dictates, not because God's mandates, but because God gives you the opportunity to do so. Don't go kill a cow. Don't go kill a calf. Don't stand in line. Yes, I know, Janice. That limits my access to the New Testament, doesn't it? Did you know that, like the Maccabees, I'm into the Maccabees these days. I'm just going to see what got cut out over the years and see what else is going on. Hey, Belinda, how are you, friend? So, Paul is saying, now Paul was a part of the very aristocracy that killed Christ. He was part of the religious structure, the government of that particular time. The tribe of Israel had its own government that was, constantly, it wasn't like we have today. It was kind of like the Amish living in Tennessee. They have their own thing, and they do their own thing. You still have to abide by the rules of the world around you, but you live in your own thing, and so you do your own thing. Okay, that's fine. You want to ride around in wagons and do laundry once a week, that's your business. That ain't none of mine. So anyway, Paul was kind of in that same setup when he was Saul. Ooh, scandal. Also remember that Saul was the very first king of the Hebrew nation. And so he was a murderer of these people who were following Christ. He was in the rooms with people who were greatly frustrated by the influence that Jesus was having on the world around them. They didn't want to lose power. They didn't want to be in a place where they had to say, okay, I'm going to let go of what I've earned, my authority, my position of power. I want to stay on top where I am. Thank you so much. And so Saul was a part of those. After Saul was walking down the road, and Saul was blinded with scales on his eyes, is how it's described in Scripture, where he was pushed out on the limb a little bit, and he got to step outside of his comfort zone, and he had a life-changing experience. Just like me, just like my mother, just like many of you. When we find ourselves dangling high over the ground and the winds are blowing and you think, my God, this limb ain't going to hold much longer, those are the times we really get to see who God is. And we get to have those conversations, and I would love to have them while I'm clinging to the tree trunk. If I can figure out how, I'm going to and would love to. However, unfortunately, it seems as though a lot of our circumstances closer to the tree trunk that make us feel safe and comfortable often keep our eyes closed to who God is and just how big God is, and keep our faith very small. And God wants our faith to be very big, because if you're an eternal, omnipotent being, then you really don't need safety zones, do you? You don't. You don't need safety nets if you're God. So Paul, yes, God uses all of us, even Paul. So Paul has his come to Jesus, just like my mother had in Idaho and I had on the ugly brown couch in my living room, and continues his journey as Paul, now that he has been transformed. And so Paul knows the rules. Paul knows exactly what you're supposed to do in order to appease and satisfy God. And what Paul is saying to all of these new churches that he's talking to and walking around with, saying, don't stop doing it by the rules. It's by God's mercies that you are invited to live your life as a living sacrifice. there, in one very conservative way of reading, and if that's your interpretation, go to it. There's this sense that it's like, okay, life isn't God worthy or God pleasing until it's painful. I don't read this or the original text, because y'all know I love to go back to the Greek. Love to go back to the Greek and see it word for word. Well, this is what this word means, and I like to put it in that order. And I don't speak Greek, and I certainly don't speak ancient Greek, but to me it makes more sense reading it in that way. So I find these verses in this translation, and then I go look them up word for word with the Greek. I don't think God is saying you have to suffer. There is a school of thought that says you're not God pleasing until you suffer. I do not agree with that. I think suffering comes because it's a function of gravity. But I don't think God puts it on us in order to punish us or to make God happy. I think God takes us to the tree branch from time to time so we can see how far we can fly. And that's scary, it is terrifying, and sometimes it is painful. But it is also miraculous. You don't know until you've flown just how magical it is. And so God invites us into these experiences through God's mercy, not God's rules, not God's do it or else, not God's punishment, not God's check boxes, but because of what God wants for us in our relationship with God. God invites us to the tree limb. And so in those mercies, we're invited to live a life turning our back on fear, turning our back on assumptions, turning our back on misconceptions, turning our back on anger, on resentment, on rage, on fear, on certainty, on negative self-image, on doubt, all of those things. Write them down, put them in the trash where they belong, because God is calling us to sacrifice not cows, not happiness, not safety or security, but our fears. I believe that's what this verse says. When God says, by the mercies of God, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Put your fears on the altar. Let God have them. Put your anger on the altar. Let God have it. Put your uncertainty on the altar. Let God have it. Put your unkindness on the altar. Let God have it. Sacrifice those things that we cling to as part of our fiber, as part of our being. How many times, and I get it, and it's a difficult and fine line to walk, where you have things that happen to you that define you in some way, that shape you in some way. And because they shaped you, it feels like kind of a part of you, right? And so I think we cling to those things because of the role they've played in our story, when in reality, they didn't shape us as much as they were just little nudges. Back on the Tin Lizzies, back at Opryland, they had that, when you'd go around in circles and there was that metal thing in the middle so you couldn't cross over into lanes or whatever. And then when it was your turn to get off the track, there was that little bumper that would come up and just kind of push you over into the exit lane. That's what those circumstances are. They're little bumpers to push us where we need to be. I'm a child welfare lawyer because my grandmother was a hateful old cow. And it's easy. Some people perceive in my family that I'm stuck on that. I'm not stuck on it as much as this is a thing that explains why I am the skill set I have. I don't think that I became a child welfare lawyer to advocate for children. I became a child welfare lawyer because those were all the doors that opened, and it fulfilled me when I got in the middle of them. I did not pray to become a child welfare lawyer. I love my job, and I'm in this job. Tiny Jones's husband, Judge Jones, I called him, I was like, I'm going to be a specialist. And he goes, why? I'm like, I don't know, because I feel like I want to. He's like, okay, whatever. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign. And so those doors just continued open. Now I'm the state coordinator for the National Association of Counsel for Children. I'm on TBA executive boards. I'm on legislative committees. I'm in a position to advocate for policy and change and better things. And I'm also in a position to go to court on Fridays and tell a dad you're doing the right thing because you put your kids first. This may be the biggest and most important parenting decision you ever make. And it's one that a lot of us have never had to make. I've never had to sign my name to paper. I've gotten close one time, but I've never had to choose between this set of circumstances and another on behalf of my child. So that's a really difficult parenting decision that a lot of us haven't had to have or go through. And so I can't tell you what that feels like, but I can tell you that this set of circumstances that really sucks in some way can be redeemed. Because my God says, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. All right. Do not be conformed to this world. Ooh, Paul, look at Paul. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut from time to time. Ain't that right? Be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. When, hold on a second, make sure. Okay, hold on. I'm behind on comments. Lori, have a great day at church, friend. Sorry I missed your thing there. Hello, Tina. How are you, neighbor? Morning, friend. We're still praying for your mom. How's she doing? Transformed tells us that we, like Transformers is a very common cartoon that was a big deal. Then it got made into movies featuring Mark Wahlberg. How you doing? Where normal run-of-the-mill cars would be able to, hello Shannon, how are you, friend? Would be able to flip and flop and wiggle and hinge and come up into a robot being with the ability to think and the ability to, it was a classic Good versus Evil cartoon. I don't remember all the characters. There was an Optimal Prime. I don't know what that dude did, or I don't know if that was a good or a bad character. Wasn't a Transformer junkie when I was a child, but I do know that that existed. And the point being that when we transform, we take things that are familiar, run-of-the-mill, everyday things, and we change them into more than what they ever could have become before. When Paul says, do not be conformed, do not be with the world. Conformed is a word that means don't be consistent, don't match, camouflage into the world. Do not be conformed to this world. Don't accept it. Don't be shaped by this world. And by this world, Paul is speaking of, in specifically these Bible times, a time when Christ had been crucified and Christians were really trying to weigh the journey between, do I go back to the way it was? Do I go back to the status quo? Do I go back to hating who people tell me to hate? Do I go back to following the rules that I was given as a child? Do I go back to the way things were in order to keep the peace? Or do I become something bigger and more powerful by the transforming of my mind? So that we can discern the will of God, what is good and what is acceptable and what is perfect. When we do the hard work, we'll use Maddie as an example. If Maddie's mind wins this battle, and I don't know how it's going to turn out. It's about 50-50 right now. If Maddie's mind wins this battle, then she will spend all day. She'll waste her time sleeping. She will waste her time trying to make herself feel bad. She will waste her time paranoid that something terrible is going to happen to her. Or she will take control of her mind. And she will say, just because I see this over here doesn't mean it applies to me. Just because my sister's sick doesn't mean I have to be sick too. Just because this person says that doesn't mean I have to think and feel that way too. I can focus on the things that are noble and good and high. I can turn off the crap that comes on to my phone through social media and my television through whatever. My children cannot watch Real Housewives of anything or America's Funniest Home Videos. And I know, those, I'm thinking too much, and I get it. And this is not a judgment on those folks that watch those shows, because there's a world of folks that do it. That's your business. This is not my business. In my house, my children, it's kind of a slippery slope. They find it really easy to get on bandwagons. And so, there's 3 of them. You take any one child out, all of them are perfect. You put the 3rd child back in the pack, it's wild, wild west around here. And so they find it very easy to gang up on other kids, each other mostly, say things. They love to say things about people's bodies, and that drives me up the wall. And so, America's Funniest Home Videos has made a small third world country's fortune making fun of people who find themselves the victim of pranks or in just really kind of funny accidents. But it'd be one thing if so we were swinging and Maddie fell out of the swing and she just landed. She didn't bounce. She just landed. And I laughed and she laughed because it was thud. It was hilarious. But I was with her in that. Hello, Katie. How are you, friend? I was with her in that moment. I was with her as her mom. I was there to pick her up when she fell. I made sure she was okay before I laughed. And those are things that she and I laughed about together. Hello, Courtney. When we poke fun at other people, when we give ourselves permission to make a profit off other people's misfortune, I'm telling myself it's okay for me to enjoy your misery. And I don't ever want to be there. I don't want to be a person who celebrates the pain of somebody else. I want to be a person who celebrates the hard work that it takes to get over that. I want to be the person that celebrates the redemption. I want to be the person that celebrates the bearing all things, believing all things, hoping all things, enduring all things. And so I want my kids to have practice turning off things that don't work for them. We have a lot of conversations about positive peers and what does it look like when people aren't people? What do red flags look like? And how do we avoid them? How do we get the trash out of our own backyard so that we can start planting flowers? Because I am sick to death of maggots. I don't want nothing to do with them. I hate cockroaches. I don't want anything to do with them. I only want butterflies and hummingbirds and bluebirds and cardinals and blue jays and mockingbirds and clematis and butterfly bushes and roses and roses and roses and roses in my backyard. That's all I want. And so I want to do the hard work to transform my mind. Transforming our minds means because we're born and so often collect the crap from everybody else. We collect mean people in our family who aren't kind to us. We collect friends that say ugly things and aren't kind to us like we want them to be. We collect people who separate themselves from us or can't see us because of other groups they hang around. I mean, like, we see the worst pile of crap that we put in our own backyards is the voice in our own head that we use to tell ourselves we're not good enough. We're not smart. I was watching, there's a content creator that I like watching her because she does stuff about her kids all the time, which is funny to me. Because she's right. Like, childhood development is amusing. And so she said she had taken a break because she's a bad rester, and she's a bad rester because she's an idiot. And I just wanted to be like, no, you're a bad rester because you're busy, and you set high expectations for yourself because you are capable, but sometimes you don't know how to rein that in, and that's okay because we have to learn those things. It's hard. It's hard to figure out where boundaries should go, and that's okay, and the world does not stop for us to figure out where those boundaries are. So we will not call ourselves names. Am I clear? We will not. No ma'am. No ma'am. We do not call ourselves names. We are beautiful children of God who are just trying to figure out things. And it's our first time. And it's hard sometimes. And that's okay. And so when we get in those spaces, it's the transforming that allows us to discern what is good and acceptable and perfect. What if we transform our mind to see roses and use all the crap that comes our way as fertilizer for them, as it should be? I mean, I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to say this. Shit is valuable when placed in the right place. When we take it and we put it around the beautiful plants and we use it for its value instead of piling it up to attract nuisance animals, it changes our world. It makes our world. We can take these things that we assumed were stinky and smelly and gross and disgusting, and we can place it strategically where beautiful things need nourishment. When we learn how to be compassionate and patient and kind in the face of misery and heartbreak. When we take the leftovers, when we take the stuff that looks used up and we use it to retain the good things around, and it gives us a minute, we can really build a really beautiful garden. We can, when we use words that are kind instead of words that are judgmental, when we train our mind to stop looking for the bad in every moment and instead look for the hope in every moment and the good in every moment. I had a friend who was listening to a podcast yesterday while I was traveling, and I was like, it's called Hope in America, I think. And I was like, did you find any? And he was like, it's just really interesting to see how other people have gone through hard times. And there's these very dramatic examples all throughout history, right? Where we can look and see where people had to show up and do hard things, where people had to live through things that felt scary and overwhelming and uncomfortable. And, we all die. None of us are going to make it out alive. How do we use this time? Paul says we use this time not by being conformed to the crap the world has to offer. We don't take it and shove it in the backyard and wait for the possums to arrive. We put that stuff out of our backyards and we focus on transforming our space, starting with our head, so that we can discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. That's how we get there. Transform. We're going to go from run-of-the-mill Camaros to hot yellow bumblebees if we just do it. That's a reference to the Transformers movie. And to be very transparent, all I know about the Transformers movie, we have now passed everything I know about Transformers. I do know, because I've been on that journey. I went, so when I first, about the same time I asked Judge Jones for that reference, I was frustrated with my practice. I was not able to shut down Monsanto. Turns out cancer did that. Hello, Beverly, how are you? I wasn't able, I felt like I was taking cases where I had to take positions that were opposite to my own moral beliefs. I did not like that, and it was causing the inauthenticity of having to do one thing and believe another. Hello, Cynthia, how are you? Was really difficult for me, and I couldn't figure out how to do it well. And so this child welfare journey, like I said, the path rose to meet me. It was not one I sought out. And so when I started down this path where I can really advocate for kids, and hope is my jam. Like, I just love it. I love everything about it. And then we got to throw in this cosmic sprinkle concept, which is fantastic. I take balloons to court. Hello, Mary Hodge. And somebody the other day was like, I thought about bringing balloons, but I just don't think I could pull it off. And the judge was like, I think Stacy is literally the only person with the personality to pull off these balloons. And so I get to have a helium tank as a write-off on my taxes. And I don't even work for the fair. That's great. I didn't plan this path, but it came to me and I'm grateful for it. I couldn't imagine any other path having lived on it. Now I'm writing books that involve a unicorn and a grumpy cat, and if I can find an illustrator, then we'll have them suckers out. And just really having these hard conversations. All of that requires me every day to wake up and choose between, am I going to get bogged down in the frustration of the world around me? Am I going to get bogged down in laws that don't make sense, that hurt children? Am I going to get bogged down working with people who don't see the world the way I do? Am I going to get bogged down dealing with parents who are mean and I don't think they're mean because they just love being mean. They're mean for their own pain. I totally have empathy for that. But nonetheless, there are children that are broken. How am I going to get bogged down? I'm shocked at the number of times I have the same conversation with different people about, this child needs somebody day in, day out for the next 18 years or 15 years or 10 years or 4 years. And so waiting for somebody who is still living in fear, who still is afraid they're going to be alone, afraid that the world is too big, afraid they're not going to make it without addiction, afraid that they're not good enough. We're waiting for them to come out, and in the meantime, we're creating another person who lives off fear. And at what point do we start living off love? And I'm going to wake up every day knowing that sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes it does. And none of it has anything to do with me. Like, all of it is me showing up, and none of it has anything to do with me. Because it's God's journey, not mine. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. But changing every day, it's that transformation of our mind that puts us in a place to receive love or to stay bogged down in fear. It is ours. That is our responsibility. I can't control anything else except that. Do I choose love today? Am I going to choose to live in love and live in God and God live in me? Or am I going to stay stuck in fear? Afraid of punishment, afraid of less than, afraid. I get to pick. And that's an incredible responsibility. And it's also an incredible opportunity. And an absolutely magnificent gift that only God can give. Okay. Y'all gotta go to church. I gotta go check on a kid and make sure she's taking her ibuprofen. Any closing prayer requests or praises? Good morning, Jennifer. Happy birthday, by the way. Our friend Jennifer had a birthday this week. Any closing prayer requests or praises before we get going? Anyone? All right, will you join me, please? God, thank you for this word. Thank you for Paul, who wrote down such an incredible tip, not just for finding you, because you are where you are, and you are who you are, and you are what you are. You are I am. And I love that every breath I take, I can dedicate to you. Forgive me for the ones that pass by with my indifference, not paying attention to the miracle that is existence, the magic that is in our relationship. God, forgive me for those moments when I forget how big you are and how big I am in you. But thank you for the opportunity to transform my mind to remember. Thank you for the opportunity for the do-over. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to live in your mercies and offer ourselves as living sacrifices to you, choosing to put down fear, choosing to put down hate, choosing to put down anger, choosing to put down uncertainty, choosing to put down self-doubt, and choosing to pick up the love you have for us and allowing us to live in love so we can live in you. Carry us through this week, living only in love. Give us your love so we can offer it to others and share that which we have so generously received. Amen. Well, guys, you know where I am if you need me. Put your prayer requests in the comments. Happy to join you in prayer today or any other time. Just let me know. Love y'all.